In 1984, a film released that chronicled the trials and tribulations of an English heavy metal band on tour in the United States. The band in question was Spinal Tap.
We are Spinal Tap from the UK! You must be the USA!
And even though the group was completely fictional, the actors were really singing and playing their instruments, all while providing spot-on portrayals of pompous English rockers.
They see us on stage with tight trousers. We've got, armadillos in our trousers. I mean, it's really quite frightening, the size.
So a sizable portion of the audience believed that the band was completely real.
When the film first came out, people came up to me and said, why would you make a movie about a band nobody's ever heard of? And one that's so bad?
Yeah. However, for anybody who was actually in on the joke, This Is Spinal Tap introduced the concept of a mockumentary to a wider audience than anything that came before it.
See?
You just bought it?
Don't touch it.
I was just pointing at it.
Well, don't point even.
Don't even point?
No.
Can I look at it?
No.
But now they're back with a sequel over 40 years in the making. Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues. So today we'll be looking over nearly 60 years of lore to figure out how exactly this band has managed to sustain
Listen to it.
such a long-lasting presence in pop culture.
Let's talk about your reviews a little bit.
Meryl Schindler of Los Angeles Magazine says This Is Spinal Tap is the funniest rock movie ever made.
You can't print that.
You don't find that offensive?
No,
you don't find that sexist?
Playboy calls it a refreshing, hilarious rockumentary that sends up what the Beatles started with A Hard Day's Night.
So that's nitpicking, isn't it?
This is Spinal Tap, the band, the movie, the motion picture, rated R.
Seeing as a good portion of my regular viewing audience was born after the year 2000, some of the things I'll be showing and referencing throughout this video are so old that they'll probably resemble cave paintings to those people. Or I guess Stonehenge carvings. But bear with me because without This Is Spinal Tap, things like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, What We Do in the Shadows, and The Office most likely wouldn't exist.
Rock and roll. Turn it up to 11. Spinal cord.
The origins of Spinal Tap go all the way back to the late 60s, when a young Michael McKean and Christopher Guest met one another while attending the acting program at NYU. And they didn't know it at the time, but the qualities that drew them together in the first place ended up planting the seeds for Spinal Tap over a decade before the band was even conceived.
He was funny, he played the guitar.
As their friendship flourished, Michael and Christopher were playing music and writing songs together, but definitely not ones with lyrics that used mud flaps as a euphemism for a woman's butt cheeks. Or about getting your love pump licked.
What do you call this?
Well, this piece is called Lick My Love Pump.
Michael at least was more so aligned with Baroque pop groups of the time. And actually prior to his time at NYU, briefly played in a chart-topping band called The Left Bank. But they kind of imploded before he had the chance to record anything with them.
How many shows did you guys actually do?
0. We recorded one single during the time I was there, but I didn't play on it.
After their time at NYU, Chris stayed in New York to continue his acting pursuits on Broadway. Also joining National Lampoon for the stage show Lemmings, alongside Chevy Chase, John Belushi, and future This Is Spinal Tap co-star Tony Hendra. And Michael went off to Los Angeles where he joined a comedy team called The Credibility Gap. The Credibility Gap provided another very important stepping stone towards the formation of Spinal Tap, as this is where Michael met and began a friendship with a long-haired, deep-voiced fellow by the name of Harry Shearer.
You don't have to guess who!
Then I won't guess who!
So don't guess who!
All right!
Harry Shearer started his career as a child actor, once even sharing the screen with Lou Costello, and even appearing as sort of the proto-Eddie Haskell in the pilot episode of Leave It to Beaver.
What are you trying to do? Give me the business?
But Harry's parents wanted him to have a normal childhood, so his acting roles were intentionally limited during that era of his life, which fortunately provided him with the spare time needed to teach himself to play the bass guitar. With their live comedy shows, The Credibility Gap, but more specifically the duo of Michael McKean and David Lander, caught the attention of Penny Marshall and her husband, Rob Reiner. Michael and David impressed them with a pair of dopey greaser characters named Lenny and Squiggy.
I just heard a word I didn't like, mister.
And it turns out that Rob and Penny had recently landed a Happy Days spinoff with ABC called Laverne and Shirley. And even though it seems like they couldn't be more opposite from one another, Laverne and Shirley is extremely important to the story of Spinal Tap. Michael and David were hired onto the show as apprentice writers, but were also promised that they could, from time to time at least, appear on the show as their Lenny and Squiggy characters. So naturally, they wrote themselves into the pilot episode, which pretty much guaranteed them main character roles for a majority of the show's 8-season run.
Hello.
Lenny and Squiggy eventually formed a band called Lenny and the Squigtones, which exploded out of the small screen and onto the concert stage with a 30-gig tour, a full-length LP, and a performance on American Bandstand in June of 1979.
Lenny and the Squig Tones.
I got the chassis off a Woody and a pair of 60X50.
And this performance was really special because it just so happened to introduce the world to one of the most legendary guitar players of all time, the one and only Nigel Tufnel.
Oh, my name is Nigel Tufnel. I come from Swindon, England. I play guitar.
Although they share the same exact name and speak with identical accents, this actually isn't the same Nigel Tufnel that we were eventually introduced to through This Is Spinal Tap. Christopher Guest and Michael McKean had been improvising sort of just general British rocker characters for years and years, and Chris's go-to name for his rocker persona was Nigel Tufnel. But the inspiration for the distinct personalities in the band came from a hilarious interaction that Chris witnessed while he was waiting for a friend in a hotel lobby.
An English band was checking in. This was 1974. The manager says to one of them, "Where's your bass?" "I don't know, I think I left it at the airport." "You left your bass at the airport?" "I don't know, where is it?" "Well, I don't know, I'm asking you." Well, it went on for 15 minutes. I don't think I've ever been happier, except for the night that I met my wife.
Right around the same time as this American Bandstand performance, Rob Reiner was getting ready to debut a television special called The TV Show. The TV show was set from the point of view of a guy flipping through channels on his television set, and each station showed a satirical take on the types of programs being broadcast on TV during that era, including a parody of the popular late-night live music program called The Midnight Special.
Are you ready to rock and roll?
The TV show acted as the final piece of the puzzle when it came to the formation of Spinal Tap, because even though they had all previously appeared in the same episode of Laverne and Shirley, the TV show marked the first time that Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, and Christopher Guest appeared on screen together at the same time, with the debut of a fictional heavy metal band called Spinal Tap, named after a painful medical procedure because, as Rob Reiner put it, what could be more heavy metal than that?
Might say you're gonna love them to death. Spinal Tap. Been a rocker since a dawn of West. I've been a roller since way back then. Oh yeah.
Spinal Tap's introduction to the world wasn't quite as refined as what we would see later on. They weren't actually named in the segment, but Nigel was kind of like the makeupless love child of Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, complete with the shiny silver pants, Ibanez Iceman guitar, and a tongue he just couldn't keep in his mouth. David St. Hubbins kind of looked like Alex Lifeson from Rush if his hairdresser hit him with a restraining order. And Derek Smalls honestly wasn't all that different, he just hadn't entered his leather era quite yet. On keyboard, you had folk singer-songwriter Loudon Wainwright III wearing a shiny afro-shaped wig that made him look like fucking Coconut Head. And on the drums, legendary session musician Russ Kunkel, who went on to play Peter James Bond in the movie, the drummer that spontaneously combusted.
He exploded on stage. It just was like a flash of green light, and that was it. Nothing was left.
Dozens of people spontaneously combust each year.
The TV show was unfortunately one and done, but Rob Reiner was so taken aback by the guy's dedication to these characters that he just had to do something else with them.
And when we were doing that segment of the show, they'd improvise, on the set while we were just waiting to, do a shot. And it was hysterical. They were in character. And we said, geez, it would be great to find a way to take these characters and do something more than just this little 3-minute bit. And so that became kind of the beginnings of what ultimately became Spinal Tap.
Rob and Harry began brainstorming something to work Spinal Tap into, but lucky for them, it turned out that Chris had already directed what was essentially the earliest version of a Spinal Tap movie.
Chris and Michael had done a little short of these two rockers that, run into each other in a hotel room, and they did it on tape.
As far as I know, that tape has never been released, but it was the key factor that inspired Rob to approach the film as a comedic take on mockumentaries of the time. Initially, they wanted to set the film from the point of view of roadies following the band on tour. But then, less than a year after Spinal Tap made their stage debut, a movie called Roadie came out, and that idea went out the window. So instead, the focus was shifted directly onto the band and its members.
Why don't you play this alone without some fucking angel hanging over your head? You know what I mean?
Rob Reiner took the concept to a company called Marble Arch, who gave him $60,000 and told him to write up a screenplay. The guys chose to focus the movie on a heavy metal band because the genre was assified and easier to grab hold of comedically. Heavy metal songs consisted of only 3 chords, which made them easier to write and perform. And that's why, to study up before writing the movie, Harry, Chris, and Michael went to see AC/DC, the masters of 3-chord rock, on their Back in Black tour. And that's where they discovered that the massive wall of amps AC/DC played in front of weren't all actually plugged in, so they stole that idea for the movie. Meanwhile, Rob Reiner went to see Judas Priest on their British Steel tour, where his biggest takeaway was the incredible volume of the band. He recalls that the bass and drums sent vibrations into his chest that made him feel as if he was having a heart attack. But Harry did probably the most important research out of any of the band members when he tagged along with British heavy metal band Saxon.
All heavy metal bands got a basically identical image. Why?
We like to dress silly.
But when Rob and the guys sat down to write a script, they were stumped, because this movie was actually going to be shot like a documentary. The dialogue had to come naturally through improvisation and actual conversation between these fictional band members. So they said, screw this, pulled together another 30 grand, got themselves a 16mm film camera, and shot essentially a 20-minute demo reel that better conveyed the concept of This Is Spinal Tap than a screenplay ever could.
What's the name of this?
This part of it's called Lick My Love Pump.
Rob recalls bringing that short back to Marble Arch, who didn't have the kindest reaction. The guy he met with just said, I hate this.
What are we gonna do now?
So the guys went on their way, showing the short film to Hollywood studio after Hollywood studio, none of which really got the humor or understood the concept of a comedic documentary about a fictional band.
He exploded on stage. All that was left was a little stain on his drum seat.
But the project finally got off the ground when Embassy Pictures, a studio run by two individuals who previously produced All in the Family, agreed to finance the movie for $2 million. Not everybody at the studio fully understood the project, but having worked with Reiner in the past, they knew old Meathead would probably deliver something good.
You are a meathead.
Before filming began in the later part of 1982, not only did the guys go into the studio to record a full-length Spinal Tap album, but they also wanted to make sure that their performances would look believable on screen. Instead of doing like an open mic night at some rinky-dink coffee house or something, they played opening spots for established bands. One of them was called
Killer Pussy.
But crazy enough, they also opened for Iron Butterfly. Nobody knew who they were, and there was no parody involved, but Rob Reiner was in the audience taking notes on the band's performance, which helped to tighten up the filming process once cameras began rolling. And when they finally got to filming, all they had to go by was a list of general plot points for the story to follow, personalities for their respective band members, and basically a few pages chronicling the history or lore, if you will, of the band. All the dialogue you hear in the film was completely improvised.
Material.
What's that on your finger?
It's my gum. I might need it later.
The only exception being a line by the president of Polymer Records, played by an actor named Patrick McNee, who admitted that he wasn't an improv guy, so they wrote up a speech for him to recite.
Tap into America!
By the time filming began, the guys had definitely pinned down their exact influences for each character. David St. Hubbins looks and dresses exactly like Rick Parfitt from the London-based band Status Quo, which fit perfectly because Status Quo had a very similar career trajectory to Spinal Tap's fictional backstory. They took a turn from psychedelic rock to hard rock a decade or so into their career, and if you look at their performance of the song Pictures of Matchstick Men from Top of the Pops in 1968, they do the same dopey, forced smiles as shown in Tap's performance of Gimme Some Money when they went by the name The Tamesmen. Nigel Tufnel kept the same uncontrollable tongue a la Gene Simmons, but it seems like they modeled his look and personality after Jeff Beck. Chris has since denied that the character was inspired by Jeff, but his hair is identical. He's always mouthing notes while playing guitar. He's constantly chewing gum both off and on stage, and he carries the same sort of carefree vibe during interviews. Nigel always appears as if he can't wait to get through whatever questions he's being asked, and basically never lets anybody complete a sentence.
Well, I mean, so you'd have to...
Derek Smalls had probably the most drastic change in looks because he traded that weird suspender t-shirt for a full-on Judas Priest-inspired leather outfit, and his peach fuzz handlebar mustache evolved to a full-blown Lemmy Kilmister-inspired stash, and he swapped his Paul McCartney-style Hofner bass for this double-necked monstrosity, and a bass that I'm guessing was loosely inspired by Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstrat design, covered in goofy, sparkly tape. Rounding out the band were Mick Shrimpton on drums, played by a session musician named Rick Parnell, and Viv Savage, played by David Kaff, who dropped one of the most inspiring one-liners in all of cinema.
Have a good time all the time.
But the underlying theme of the movie is that these guys are just so ridiculously out of touch with reality. The appeal of their band has dwindled to an all-time low, but they hold such a high level of self-importance that they or their management will never admit as much.
Does this mean the popularity of the group is waning?
I just think that their appeal is becoming more selective.
The band's tour is plagued by low ticket sales leading to cancellations, which apparently mirrored a common problem in the US around that time.
But rock is in a recession. Kids are pouring their money into video games. Records aren't selling, and fewer rock bands are on tour.
But the cross-country tour simply provides a catalyst for all of the little moments shared between the band members themselves and the interactions they have with filmmaker Marty DiBergi. There are so many incredible scenes to talk about. Derek getting stuck in his alien pod during a concert, only to emerge from it after the other guys re-enter theirs. The recording studio fight.
Can't fucking concentrate because your fucking wife. It's not my wife. Well, whatever the fuck she is, all right? You can't concentrate.
But the segment in Nigel's guitar room might just be the most highly referenced moment in the entire movie.
And I can play without all the map.
You can run anywhere on stage.
If you're a guitar player, the sustain conversation is just an all-timer.
Listen.
How much is
Just listen for a minute. The sustain, listen to it.
I'm not hearing anything.
You would, though, if it were playing.
But this scene is where Christopher Guest provided a master class in comedic timing while explaining the technological advancements of his custom Marshall amp head that went to 11 across the board.
Does that mean it's louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
This gag came from numerous hard rock and heavy metal bands of the time that made the bold claim that they were in fact the loudest group out there, including the band that Harry shadowed on tour.
We are the loudest band in the world.
That moment is obviously incredible, but I love the fact that he begins the scene by saying he plays and cherishes all of his instruments.
I play them and I cherish them.
And like 3 seconds later, he's yelling at Marty for even thinking about touching or looking at an instrument that he's never gonna play.
Look, see? Still got the old tagger on it. See, never even played it.
While the members were kind of loosely based on well-established rock stars, the events depicted within the film were inspired by or pulled from various rockumentaries and stories floating around at the time. For example, the band playing a concert for an unenthused audience at an Air Force base was inspired by John Sinclair of the band Uriah Heep, who, just before filming began, told the guys about a similar experience on a recent tour. So they just had to throw it into the story at the last minute.
You are Spinal Tap?
Meanwhile, the band getting lost on their way to the stage in Cleveland was inspired by the Tom Petty documentary called Heartbreakers Beach Party.
Oh, we're in the wrong room.
Nigel's hilarious demands for bigger bread on his sandwich platter,
And I don't want this, I want large bread.
came from tales about bands with outrageous requests on their tour rider sheets for promoters. Specifically Van Halen's strict no brown M&Ms policy, which at the time was thought of as some big-headed rocker type shit, but the reasoning behind it was actually very understandable. But one of the absolute best scenes in the movie comes during a live performance of the song Stonehenge, where a misunderstanding of the difference between inches and feet leads to a 1.5 foot tall Stonehenge monument being crafted for their stage, at which point they hired 2 little people to create the illusion that it was actually way bigger. A lot of people assume that Spinal Tap ripped this off from Black Sabbath, but they actually came up with this concept years before Black Sabbath did it for real. And hilariously enough, the aluminum foil wrapped cucumber in the pants gag came from a real scenario. Apparently Christopher Guest was shopping at a guitar store in the 70s when a well-known British rocker that he's never revealed the identity of walked in and seemingly had a baguette stashed in his pants. This rocker sat down at some point, and when he stood up to leave, the bulge slipped down to his ankle. But one of the most important aspects of This Is Spinal Tap's appeal lies in the music. Like any movie with a fictional band, if you don't have quality songs, or at least ones that are somewhat catchy or clever, you got nothing. For example, every time I watch the movie That Thing You Do, I get the title track stuck in my head for like a week. And the same thing goes for all-time classics such as Big Bottom, Spinal Tap's Send Up of Fat Bottomed Girls by Queen. And of course, Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You Tonight, the band's big opening anthem that poked fun at songs like Jailbait by Ted Nugent and Christine 16 by Kiss, who wrote songs like that but had the gall to get offended when people accused them of catering to a younger demographic.
When you realize the audience that you're reaching, which seems to be composed largely of 10 to 14-year-old girls, you ever feel ashamed of yourself?
I don't think you've done your homework.
The album the band traveled overseas to promote, Smell the Glove, had a cover too vulgar and sexist to be released in the United States.
What's wrong with being sexy? I mean, there's no
Sexist.
And so the band was forced to release a censored version, which was just an all-black cover with absolutely nothing alluding to the artist or album name. The record couldn't be more black if it tried.
How much more black could this be? And the answer is none. None
good?
more black.
Metallica, of course, replicated this same strategy for 1991's The Black Album. And you'd better believe that the fellas in Tap had something to say about that.
Where did the idea come from to do an all-black album, Metallica representative?
Throughout the 2-month filming process, Rob Reiner amassed over 40 hours of footage for the movie. But over a 9-month period, Rob and crew managed to whittle everything down to 83 minutes. And that's the cut he delivered to Embassy Pictures. The studio still didn't like it or understand it, but they had $2 million on this thing. So they set up some test screenings in Dallas and Seattle to see how it would do in the Heartland and a college town before giving it a wider release. And Dallas was a complete disaster.
There are two girls in front of me, and they said, these guys are stupid. Why would they make a movie about such a bad band? They thought it was just a real documentary.
So Rob Reiner and an editor went back and trimmed up some of the scenes to kind of speed the movie up a bit, and they were convinced that Seattle would absolutely love what they came up with. Well, that screening garnered the exact same response. At that point, Embassy Pictures basically decided that they were going to pour the absolute minimum amount of money into promoting the movie. Without much studio support, This Is Spinal Tap actually didn't do all that bad in theaters. But it wasn't a success by any stretch of the imagination. Upon release in March of 1984, it was absolutely limping, in fact. But if there was anything that could save this fledgling movie from falling into obscurity, it was word of mouth, which was built up through repeat mentions of the film by David Letterman's own Paul Shearer.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went to see Spinal Tap for the second time. And I realized how small my part actually was.
Just kick my ass, okay? Kick my ass. No. Enjoy. Come on.
Along with Spinal Tap's appearance as musical guest on a season 9 episode of Saturday Night Live. It also helped that the home video release of Spinal Tap came out not only right when Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer were added to the cast of Saturday Night Live, but in a time when family-owned video stores were just absolutely raking in money. So the VHS and Betamax release of the movie gave it a second life with a whole new group of fans. And those home video releases quickly became a tour bus staple for countless musical acts, who either cried from laughter because the comedy was so close to reality, or the satire angle flew right over their heads and they saw it as a straightforward documentary. Like Liam Gallagher legitimately stopped being a fan of the band and never watched the movie again once he found out that the personalities were fictional. And then there was Ozzy Osbourne, who understood the mockumentary aspect but couldn't laugh because the movie was so accurate it was actually scary.
Funny thing about Spinal Tap, when I went to see it, I was the only person in the audience that wasn't laughing because it really was like a documentary. Everybody was going, oh, number 11, that happened. When they got lost going to the stage, that happened. No.
But one of my favorite nods to This Is Spinal Tap by a real band was a mockumentary called The Nona Tapes by Alice in Chains, which was definitely partly inspired by Tap's 1992 reunion special.
How long have you been working here at the stable?
Oh, since back when that music thing went sour a couple years back.
Also, the model on the cover of Bitch School was the same girl who appeared on the cover of Dirt.
And a lot of feminists around the world are very upset about Bitch School.
It's a mistake because the song Bitch School is about training dogs.
There's a woman on the cover of the single with a leash around her neck, but that's just for... That's just to, you know, to get your attention.
That's marketing.
That's
marketing.
That's not sexism. No.
Seeing as This Is Spinal Tap was once viewed as a bad investment by the studio that produced it, it's actually insane just how long of a life this movie has lived. Not only did it spawn an actual band that tours and puts out real albums, Break Like the Wind absolutely rocks, by the way, but references to Spinal Tap in other media are truly endless.
Craig the speaker's up to 11.
I'm Nigel Tufnel.
The guys were cast in countless rock and roll adjacent movies years later, including Airheads, which, even though I couldn't find it when I made a video on it last year, so I ended up cutting the line out of the video, did in fact have a Spinal Tap poster in the background of a scene. Nigel became so synonymous with Marshall amplifiers that they had him promote the JCM 900 amp head. Volkswagen hired him alongside Slash and John Mayer for their weird, short-lived collaboration with First Act Guitars. And the term up to 11 was quoted so often that it was eventually added to the Oxford English Dictionary. Even though This Is Spinal Tap technically wasn't the first mockumentary, this movie was so influential that Ricky Gervais admitted to stealing the concept when he created The Office. And cinematographer Peter Smokler was so respected for his contributions to the mockumentary genre that he was handpicked to film the pilot episodes of The Larry Sanders Show, the US version of The Office, Parks and Rec, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Although there have definitely been imitators over the years, and out of sheer coincidence, another early 80s fictional heavy metal band called Bad News, nothing will ever capture the magic of This Is Spinal Tap. I haven't seen the sequel yet, but that's only because none of the theaters near me have Dolby audio.
In Dublin? She means Dolby, all right?
But I definitely look forward to it because these guys are still so entertaining to watch. Like, they can even make something as mundane as an Aspercream commercial absolutely hilarious.
Relieves the pain, no odor.
I miss the odor. What are you going to do?
You can hold a slice of onion under your nose while you put it on.
I do.
You can.
But that'll do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have the time, drop your favorite quote from the movie down below. Every comment I get really helps in exposing my videos to a wider audience, and this is a one-person operation, so I definitely appreciate that. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.